All right, it's 10:02 Eastern Standard Time. Translate that to whatever time zone you guys are in that are attending. So I'd say we go ahead and get started. Jordan, how are you today?
I'm doing all right. It's Tuesday. Tuesday's a good day, better than Monday. But
For sure, for sure. Awesome. And not sure uh, where you're physically located, but where I am on the East Coast of North Carolina, fall is finally here. It's cooled off a little bit. Feels great.
yeah, it's beautiful. I'm in Baltimore and it's nice.
Yeah,
We could use a little
awesome.
rain, but I'm not sweating it.
Perfect. Well, good. Well, Jordan, again, thanks so much for being here with us today. Really appreciate you taking time. I know super busy here during Q4, so at SAP. So again, thanks so much for making the time to be with us.
Yeah.
Before we jump in, Jordan, why don't you start off? Why don't you tell me a little about yourself, background, both
Sure.
business wise and otherwise, and I'll do
Yeah,
the
you
same,
got
and
it.
we'll get going.
You got it. So I joined SAP in 2011, which makes it, gosh, 13 going on 14 years now. And I started at SAP in pre-sales, which is our demo organization. And I started in manufacturing and maintenance. And maintenance became such a hot topic over the first couple years that I just focused full time on maintenance, enterprise asset management, maintenance, and stayed in that demo organization in pre-sales for about 10 years. And I've been the past couple years, I've been in the Digital Supply Chain Center of Excellence here at SAP. And so the Center of Excellence team at SAP helps out customers um, talking about the right topics, talking about the right SAP solutions and other industry topics and solutions to make sure that customers can get good value from SAP and our partner organizations too and our partner products too. And in that time, I mean, we've spent a ton of time and there's been a lot of change in the past 5 or 6 years within maintenance topics. You go to any conference and you hear all kinds of stuff. AI is the big one now, but before that, it was the Internet of Things and, machine learning and all of these different topics. And it's a really exciting time in enterprise asset maintenance and management. And I think the topic of the day is asset master data, right? And data in general. And data has certainly always been a hot topic in the asset space. So, really pleased to be chatting with you about that today.
Awesome. Thanks, Jordan. I'll ask you a quick follow-up question. It's not direct line in terms of what we're talking about, but since we're, just having kind of a broader chat here, in your opinion, what's the difference between, say, to your point, kind of the ML and the learning models everybody was focused on 2 or 3 years ago, and what we're calling AI now?
Yeah.
It's all to some degree AI, right? So, but how would you, if you had to like really boil, and particularly in your world, that shift from kind of this ML and training models and all that over to generative AI.
Yeah.
What's your take on that little hot
I
take?
think, AI is obviously really powerful. Wall Street cares a lot about it. I think it is one of those things in the asset world. And to your point, the difference between machine learning and AI in kind of common parlance is that machine learning was kind of a black box. Unless you're a reliability engineer or a data scientist, you're not interacting with it. You're helping maybe a little bit score some of the machine learning models, but you're putting it into a black box and it's spitting out some results. AI is a little more, I don't know, consumer driven. It seems like anybody can open a chat GPT account or can go to Google's Gemini tool or Anthropic, Claude or any of these tools now and get some quick answers, and it's conversational and it's really been leaps and bounds, and it gives you that kind of window into the black box. You can tweak it, you can get some results. It's really futuristic and cool, and it's not just generative stuff too. There's way more to AI than generative stuff. Um, large language models and things like that. It's really an exciting time, and the business applications of those are exciting. So you know oftentimes the these AI tools depend on data. So coming back to our topic today, it's always important to have your data in order to be able to utilize some of these tools.
For sure, for sure. No, I think it always comes back to the data as far as we're concerned. So completely agree with that. Matter of fact, I believe I'm letting the cat out of the bag a little bit. We're presenting or attending right now the TAC Energy Conference in Portugal right now with a bunch of SAP colleagues, and we're speaking there with one of our customers and with SAP. Actually, one of the VPs is on stage with us from the digital supply chain. Ralph Faith is speaking with our CEO. But I believe, and again, I'm letting the cat out of the bag. I believe we are officially announcing and giving a sneak peek of our Kai, which is our generative AI interface for MDO, I think is debuting this week. So I'm very excited. I've seen some prototypes, so I'm very excited about it on our side as well. So as you said, it's kind of getting
Yeah,
in
that's great.
everywhere, so yeah, so very cool.
That's great.
Well, yeah, well, Jordan, thanks for information on yourself and SAP and some of the important topics. We'll again dive into a few more of those. Real quick on myself, I'm Scott Barrett. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at Prospecta. I've been with the company about 4 years now, and before that, spent 6 to 7 years at another organization known as Utopia, which played kind of in the same space. And before that, like yourself, I was with the Center of Excellence SAP for a long time around all the data technologies that SAP has, whether it's whichever one of the solutions it may be. So I've been doing this kind of thing for quite a while as well. And it is, and like I said, what's exciting to me is, as you said, the intersectionality of business problems in the heavy asset industry space, as well as the applicability of things like S4, and even how, and again, I wish my world was a little more complicated than it is sometimes, but it's usually pretty simple. Which is, we laughed when HANA first came out. And it was before even S4 came out, and we were always like, okay, well, great, you can now make bad decisions faster if you have bad data feeding that engine, and that's a topic, Jordan, we don't talk about a lot anymore, but I'm kind of pre-associating here. We spend so much time talking about operational data, right? Because we're so SAP centric, and as you guys are with design to operate and things like that. But there is that analytical element too, right? And one might argue that some forms of AI are just fast reporting, right? Without having to run a report, you can just ask the question and get the answer you're hopefully looking
Right.
for. So I think as we move to being more of a real-time enterprise, SAP customers, that always is the case. The analytic and the operational data the source data has to be more accurate and more complete, because you're feeding both those sources, and you don't have the data warehouses and the ability to check in the middle before you give your boss the report, right? You're just like, hey, here it is coming right out of the system. So yeah. Good. All right. So talking a little bit about kind of the impact of bad or good data. I think you and I have talked a lot about this over the years. I It's interesting. If I go back 20 plus years, original data quality solutions, these sorts of things were very focused on customer data, right? It was all about like names and addresses and 360-degree view of the customer, and understood that, because those were the data points that were the closest to revenue, which companies cared about, back in the day. They still do, of course. But what I really found interesting about 10 years ago, when I got more into the heavy asset side of things, is that, for these big companies that rely so much on certain types of data, the data in their plant maintenance system or the data in their material master system had sort of been ignored, is probably too strong of a word, but not treasured like it should, like some of these other areas that have been, had technology and people focused on it for a long time. So I think that means there's big opportunities there for those companies, but also maybe bigger challenges, because it's a lot of the data volumes are very high. It's been sort of allowed to be managed however they wanted to. So I thought maybe we just start out there of like some of your views on data in a heavy asset context, just to start with.
Yeah, certainly. So you make an interesting point about, customer data a lot of times was closest to revenue. And, that's definitely important. But in other asset intensive industries, and, SAP services every industry, like 26, 27, it might be 28 now. I don't know where they keep coming up with these industries, but about half of those are asset intensive industries, where assets are a critical point of the business. You think of, chemicals, you think of consumer products, any industrial manufacturer, milling, mining, rail, transportation, of course. And then some of those industries are, I would even say, heavy asset intensive industries. And, where assets are directly tied to revenue. You think of like utilities, especially distribution. You think of oil and gas. If there's any sort of downtime, it's affecting your top line and your bottom line. So in terms of asset data and having visibility to assets and having some ability to impact the overall uptime of your assets, I mean, it's super critical. And on the point of data, these are industries where the assets have had some level of data in them for a while. You talk about like, IT versus OT data, operational technology data. You talk about IoT over the last like 10 or 15 years. This telemetry data that this equipment, these very different types of equipment have been collecting and transmitting for a long time, for decades, is nothing new to these industries. But being able to use it is now kind of a newer concept, because I don't just want to be able to use it when I'm in front of the asset, looking at the gauge, seeing what the pressure is. I want to use it in a bigger sense, because we have these bigger AI models. We have these other, IT type tools where we can take the, OT type data, merge it with the master data, and have some sort of insight, right? So the insight might be, this OT data is a leading indicator of potential failure. Well, how do we know what needs to be done next? How can we be proactive? What have we done dozens or hundreds of times when this issue has come up before? And so having all the data in order, it's not just enough anymore to have your OT data. You also have to have your master data in place, and it has this kind of compounding effect. So you're really adding more velocity to your business, and you're impacting, your overall value chain of data, if you will. A lot of concepts, but hopefully that makes sense.
It does. It does. And I want to ask you a follow-up question. You and I were talking about this yesterday a little bit, and we were kind of prepping for this. Um, can you help? This may be something that everybody knows, but I'm always someone that, like, over-explaining is not the worst thing in the world. As we take one step towards talking about S4, and master data in a heavy asset kind of context, talk to me a little bit about brownfield projects, greenfield projects, what those words mean, how they come into play as people move through some of this activity. Maybe you could share a little bit around that with us.
Yeah, sure. So greenfield, you think of, I went to Texas A&M. I got the maroon on today, but Texas A&M. Fun fact about Texas A&M: it doesn't stand for anything. The A and the M used to stand for agricultural and mechanical, but now officially A&M is just A&M. Doesn't stand for anything. But for over 100 years, it was the agricultural and mechanical college. So I went to school with a lot of, like, ag majors and, engineers and those types, and, heavy presence in the oil and gas industries for sure. But when I think about greenfield and brownfield, I think about ag. I think about, planting seasons and things like that. Greenfield is, just exactly what it sounds like. You got a nice green field, you got nothing going on, you can start fresh. It's green, it's springtime, it's nice, right? And that's, from an IT implementation perspective, when we talk about factories, when we talk about plants, when we talk about new asset installations, usually we refer to that from an IT landscape. Greenfield is, you can start fresh, you can start from square one, you got a blank slate. And then brownfield is you're bringing some things, over. You've got past grow seasons of data in place that you have to use and consider when you're deciding what to plant, right? In the agricultural context. And now in the, in the data context, you've got some data in place, you've got some systems in place, legacy systems that you're carrying forward. Everything has to fit. So it's a little more of a, it's a little more of a remodel than a fresh build, switching analogies here. So you have to consider what's already there in place, and you have to make sure that, your data is clean and structured in a way, especially things like S4HANA. S4HANA has some tools for making sure that some of your data is going to be in a good spot. All of the core data that you're talking about. But I think where Prospecta comes in, and what the MDO tool in particular adds a lot of value, is making sure that supply chain specific and really asset specific data is clean and nice and ready and homogenized in a way, so that, if you've got a brownfield type situation, you've got multiple different plants, similar kinds of assets across different plants. You're not talking about, uh, you know, a hex wrench here and another kind of wrench there when you're talking about the same kind of tool or the same kind of asset. And this applies to spare parts too. I mean, there's just a ton of data to consider when you look at brownfield type of implementations. So a little bit of definition, but yeah.
No, that's super helpful. And fun fact, did you know that they are both metric and imperial hex wrenches? So, like for your IKEA projects, I had
Oh
no idea
gosh.
until recently that there's actually two different standards for those little five-sided little things that we use constantly because of IKEA and other things. I had no idea. So yeah,
Good Lord,
just go back and
we
to
don't need
units and
IKEA
measures, data
projects to be any
standards.
harder than they already are. Let me tell you that.
For sure. Hey, one follow-up question. You'd mentioned a telecom you were working with recently and had a interesting, data impact story with those guys. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So data is such a fun topic because people have different understandings of what data we're talking about, where it is in the business, and how much it matters in like a ripple effect. Data is kind of a chain or a web. It's all interconnected, especially in complex ERP systems like SAP, right? Especially S/4HANA. Because when you talk about asset master data, it has impacts to every other area of your business. It has impacts to your financial asset data, depreciation tables and schedules. It impacts your production schedules if you're in a production industry, right? But I was working with a large United States telecom company in the last couple of years, and we were in a multi-day workshop where we were coming in to talk about some of the and prove some of the scenarios that SAP can do for managing assets in data centers, managing network assets. You think of cell phone towers, building the 5G networks, and all of these things. And most of the conversations came back to just master data, specifically the equipment master, and what the equipment master is and what the equipment master isn't within SAP, what master data the equipment master holds, and the sequence of events of maturity from the inception point that asset is created, and it's in inventory, and then it's installed, and what that impacts and how that unfolds as we install it at one location, dismantle it, install it at another location, the tax jurisdictions, the depreciation tables that impacts, the visibility across the supply chain for where that asset is or isn't, and who can see it and who can do what. That's all master data. That's all master data. And the transactions, depend on having that master data be, clean and appropriate and well structured. So
Yep.
that was a majority of our conversation across 3 days, just talking about master data. So
No, it makes sense. It reminds me of a couple of different stories related to that. One is was working with a large, actually Texas-based valve company. They make valves and pumps and things like that, mostly for the oil and gas industry. And this is a company that had grown by a very successful company, grown by acquisition for a long time, and had run all those different business units as P&Ls for most of their, and then finally with pressures from industry and other reasons, they had finally said, look, we can't, we need to be able to at least like buy paper clips centrally, right? How many negotiate, how many paper clips are we buying globally versus, going to Costco every site or whatever. So anyway, so big program of work starts around multiple areas. S4 is part of that journey for this customer. Standardizing PLM systems is a part of that journey. So what the customer decided to do was they were going to do it site by site. They said for every site they were going to go to the physical location, and they were going to swap the customer over to S4. They were going to roll out a global PLM program, and they were going to clean up the master data. So those are the three things they were doing site by site versus doing it big bang, because it was just too the elephant was too big to eat other than one bite at a time. So they said, let's start with our site that has the best data. And everybody agreed, like this one site has the best master data, the best data, asset data, equipment data. And so we physically went there and spent a week together with the client and the business. And again, we were there with that corporate IT, right? And then there's the local guys who have been doing this forever. And again, if you think about master data for a second, it's people, it's process, and it's technology, right? So what these guys had done is they were running a 30-year-old Oracle system. And they had the people in the process completely figured out. They had a book about this thick and literally had definitions. And if you put this in, put it in like this, when you do a long description, do it like this. And they had 3 people that did it and had been doing it for decades. And they were like, man, we got this down. The first thing we did is profile all their data and say, oh, so in Oracle, it needs 6 digits. In SAP, it needs 8. In this, it's this format. So the first thing we did was show them their data. And we were talking about it being fit for purpose for the new system. And you would have thought we had said they had the ugliest baby that had ever been born, right? I mean, it was just like 2 days of uproar and just like disbelief. And we kept saying this, guys, in the context that you've been working in, governing people and process without any technology really, you've done a good job, but it just but that Oracle and that 25, 30-year-old Oracle system, that data doesn't fit SAP. So we're talking about conformity, right? Not whether they had done a good job, not whether they had good standards in place. But just that's just one example of one site, where that sort of thing comes into play. And then because people are very invested in this, and there's that, there's but the other one I was going to mention is large pipeline company based out of Texas and Calgary that we jointly worked on with you guys, and we hopped into a half-day procurement workshop they were running. So it's all about Ariba and automation of this and all that. And we had kind of like the caboose slot at the end of the day before drinks and happy hour, and I did my spiel about, hey, I bet 40 to 50% of all the data you have in your existing systems is bad. This was MRO spare parts related more, but I was like, I guarantee you, I'll bet you. Just give me a chance to look at your data and I'll prove it to you, and talked really fast like I do sometimes, and wrapped up. And at the end, the gentleman across, they said, okay, what topics you guys want to have deep dive workshops? And he just pointed, he said, that guy, the data guy, that stuff, our data is terrible. And that started a conversation which wasn't technology driven, wasn't, hey, look at all of how cool our platform is and all cool. It was very much a business problem of like, look, no, we know we can save a lot of money, hard dollar savings on our spare parts and our MRO inventory. But right now we don't even have a classification system. We can't tell you how many paper clips we got. We can't tell you how many ball bearings we're buying, any of that. So we can't do spend analytics. We can't do production optimization, warehouse optimization, any of that. So I think it's always relevant. But to the right, then it comes like who's the right person, and do they have the business context to understand why it matters, whether it's on the maintenance side or the procurement side or whatever it is.
Yeah, Scott, I guess maybe a follow-up question back to you. I see, data, to me, I spend a ton of time talking about this, so it just makes a lot of logical sense. Like, oh my gosh, ROI is just incredible. But you bring up a really good point around procurement and spare parts of, that's a really easy one in my view of kind of a low-hanging fruit for this is going to be, easy, fast ROI for material spend, for MRO spend, procurement spend. If you just clean up your data and consolidate and do this in a standardized way, what have you seen? Have you seen that to be true?
It's funny. I always tell the story. So I started doing data quality in 2001. That's how long I've been doing this. And then 2 or 3 years after that, when my company got acquired by Business Objects and SAP, it's been an SAP context ever since. So when I first got into this business, I was like, I was in sales, VP of sales. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. Because you go, do you have data to a prospect? Yes. Is your data bad? Yes. Do you want to talk about fixing it? And the problem was the third question. First 2 questions always got 100%. Yes, yes. The third one was, do you want to fix it? Maybe, it was always the answer. So it's because they've lived with it for a long time and figured out adapt workarounds. But I think a lot of it is finding the right person that understands why it matters. And I think procurement's a good place for that. I think maintenance is a good place for that, for this kind of data. So I think it's a good point. All right. So let's talk a little, let's switch a little deeper into our topic here. We're 20 something minutes in. So I got a pop quiz for you, Jordan. So
All right.
What's the current end of life date for ECC support by SAP?
Anybody want to chime in on the chat? Anybody know? I hope that we all know, but if you don't know, the end of life for ECC support currently is 2027.
Thank you. Yeah, currently is an important point there, because these things do change sometimes, but the currently stated position is 2027. All right, and then for our audience, people playing along at home, or you, Jordan, how many customers have already actually moved, not bought the licenses, but actually moved to S4? Percentage is fine. I'll give or a number if you have one. Oh, we had Tracy jumped in. She said 50%. That's a great guess. Anybody
Really
else?
solid guess. You would think 2027, 50% is a pretty good guess. Already moved over to S4. That's a great guess.
The actual answer is 18,000 customers, which equals about 30% of SAP's customer base. About 40% have bought the licenses. So there's a 10% lag between who's actually done it and who's in the process of doing it. So, but yeah, I would think 2 to 3 years out, it'd be further along than that. So that just means there's like a lot of customers still trying to tackle this And to your point, like early on, Jordan, what I saw was a lot of greenfield projects, right? People wouldn't want to do the full re-implementation, so they would just
Yeah.
start with greenfield S4 and keep running ECC for a while. But now with Rise, that's changing, right? Because they're lifting and bringing it over and dropping it in. So I think the deployment model is changing a good bit based on, just how SAP and the customers are tackling it.
Yes.
And then the last quiz question is, of the customers that in a recent survey, I think this was SAP Insider, but I can't. I have the citation somewhere. I apologize. What percentage of them listed data as one of their top 3 to 5 issues on an S4 program as things they were worried about? All right, Jordan, I'll put you on the hook for it. Oh, Tracy
Sure.
jumped in again. Tracy's all over this. 65%.
90, 65.
Diane said 90. Yeah. The actual number was 40%. But it should be 90.
You would think it would be higher,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
which goes back to your point of you have to find the right people in the organization who understand the pain of bad data. And I think those are the people who really understand. For them, it's 90 or 100%, right? Because that's one of their biggest challenges. But for other folks answering the survey, maybe not so much. Maybe they're a little bit secluded from the bad data.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. This is kind of to me, the heart of this conversation. And we've got a white paper coming out on this, and some more things happening for those of you out there that want to keep talking about this and thinking about this inside your organization, which you very much should, by the way. Here's what I found as someone who's, again, kind of been in the SAP ecosystem and doing, the data track in many cases for customers. Here's what I think's going on. This is an opinion. So again, I know you're with SAP and don't shoot me, but sometimes we got to have slightly difficult conversations together. So when SAP goes and talks to a customer about S4, just like when you guys talk about asset management, Jordan, you're talking about a business process. For you guys, it's designed to operate, which often drives the entire S4 value chain, which we're going to talk about again in a second. But generally, SAP's and they're talking about improving operational processes, right? Improving operational efficiency. Here, look at the new interface. Look how easy it is to maintain. Look at how great it is. So that's the discussion. I think that if SAP intentionally brought up data at that point in the conversation, everybody's scared that it's going to slow the conversation down. Because if the customer goes, "Oh God, what am I going to do with my data? Oh man, oh God, it's 20 years worth of stuff in there. What, ah." So first off, I think SAP doesn't bring it up because they're worried that it's going to slow down the S4 conversation. Um, I also think that once the customer makes the decision to move to S4, working with SAP, they go out and find an SI typically to help them implement it. The SI also is looking at a very big piece of work and getting it done on time and meeting their SLAs and having a happy customer and a happy go live. So I also think the SI doesn't bring up, what are you guys going to do about all this data? Are you going to clean it up? Are you going to consolidate it? Are you going to archive it so you have less data in S4? So I think the SI doesn't bring it up, and they go, well, whatever data you give us, we'll make sure it loads in the new system. That's part of our content here, right here on the subline 4,712. Yeah. But they never really say, like, but you're the one that has to clean it up, customer, you know. And so then by the time the business, which is the one that owns the cleanup of the data, finds out that they have to clean up 20 years worth of data, it's almost too late. They're already into the program. They're already doing design workshops around S4. And at no point has anyone ever said, what are you doing about your data? And it's going to take you 6 to 18 months to clean it up, even if you get help. So therefore it ends up not getting done because there's just not enough time because it didn't come up early enough in the process. They didn't have anyone specifically paying attention to it, either internally or externally. And they go, okay, we're gonna have this shiny new system and all these great interfaces and much more efficient business processes, but the same old duplicate, incomplete data that we've had for 20 years underneath it. So that's my personal speculation on why I think this isn't a bigger topic. What do you think?
No, I think that's really insightful. I think there are certainly certain companies and certain people within those companies that data is their hot topic. But I think at the top levels, data is more of a detail than a selling point, if that makes sense. I think, oh yeah, we'll talk about the data later. We of course we can deal with the data. There are different ways to deal with the data. But for the top levels, that might be great. But for the people in the system every day, the practitioners dealing with managing the data, it's it can definitely be a challenge. If you're living with your family and somebody comes home and says, hey, we're moving houses, we need to move houses. You got to clean your room. That's a pretty tough sell if your room hasn't been cleaned in a while, right? And there's moving companies and other stuff that will come take your boxes, but you have to organize those boxes, or else you're going to run into a huge issue when you get to your new home, right? Because you're not going to know where stuff goes, and it's going to take a while. It's going to be You're going to be in your house for a few months, or might still be boxes, and you're going, why did we move? But if that data is in the right place and you know where it is and it's well organized and it's well cared for, and you have a tool or a company who knows what they're doing with it, has been through this a lot and can help you organize it, structure it in a way so that when you're in your new house, you're ready to go right at the beginning, then I think that's a huge value. And that's something that, to your point, isn't talked about enough, and is part of the change management process, and is one of the early ways. And I have to say, there are companies and customers that I talk with recently who are very aware of that and bring it up proactively and say, hey, we're moving to S4. We have a project kicked off. We're not going to be on S4 for another year, maybe 2 years, or, we're not even starting our project yet, but we know we're going there. I'm coming to talk to you, SAP. How does my equipment master data need to look? How do I need to reorganize my task lists? What can I do about my MRO data today to make sure that when we move, it is a successful move? So I think there's becoming more awareness about that, and I'm pleased to see that, because those are good conversations to have. It means that not only are those customers moving to S4 soon, so they're going to get better capabilities soon for their end-to-end processes, but it means that they're going to be healthier deployments, happier customers, and more. They're going to get more value from the move. So that's, of course, what we want to see.
Yeah, no, I'm going to steal your box analogy. It's one I haven't thought of, but it's perfect because, at the end of the day, we could stretch that analogy a long way, right? Sometimes people are, often going to HANA, you can think of it as downsizing, right? Because you don't want to bring, your customers are paying SAP for capacity inside the new system, right? So maybe you don't want to bring every box and everything you had in the attic for the last 20 years or everything in the garage. So there's a what do I need? How much of this am I throwing away? How much am I giving away? How much am I keeping? All that. So I think that's a great way to really think about, moving. Sometimes you do get a bigger house, but not always. So a couple of quick things. I'm going to switch over to chat for a second. So we're getting some good feedback, and thank you. We definitely much like talking to Jordan. I like talking to you guys too. That's why we're here. Conrad said, observations on customer responsibility for master data is exactly what I've seen for 25 years. It simply gets stuck until the command load what we have is given, which I agree with. And then Carlos said, who are some of the leading systems and companies to help move to S4HANA? So if we're talking about, companies that are literally doing the implementations, I mean, you've got the big five, certainly are the ones that are doing, I think, probably the most of these. Almost all of the large, I'd say, Indian-based SIs all have huge S4 practices, whether it's TCS or Wipro or any of those guys. And then every time I go to a conference or an SAP event, I meet 1 to 10 companies that are more on the small side, but everybody has their niche, right? There's a lot to this. So some are focused more on the analytics and data sphere side. Some are focused more on the business data side and making sure that the systems are, S4 system is optimized for asset management or whatever the case may be. Some are data companies themselves. They offer data for, I don't know, I can think of like Ascent, for example, where they have integrity data they can bring to bear, during these sort of projects. So there's a lot of companies out there doing that. What I don't see, and I'm going to put ourselves in this category, and there's a few others, what I don't see are what I think of as data partners. So, one of the things we're going to recommend to anybody that's looking at S4 is not only do you need an SI to manage the whole program, maybe you need SAP Global Services for a little delivery assurance around that, but you also need a data partner. A partner is going to, from early on, from 2 years before you go to S4, is going to talk to you and say, here's what you should be doing with your data. Here's how to focus on your master data and improve it. And here's how to get value out of it right now in a phase zero approach. Because if you're not going to 2026, 2027, that's a long time from now. You can use that time. You can take all your existing master data, which is only about 10% of the data in an SAP system, right? You can put it into a platform like MDO, which is, cloud-based, non-system specific. You can pull the data out of ECC or other systems, and then you can work on it, and you can decide what master data you want and what master data is good, and you can report off that and use that as golden records today, And then when you're ready to go to S4, you switch the back end over from ECC to S4, click a button, and it'll load all your master data. Again, we're not talking about a full transactional data load with proper data migration and all that. We're just talking, again, just the master data. So there are things you can do right now, even if you're way out on an S4 program. Hopefully not too far out, but that's something that, again, I think, we talk about a lot. There's a couple other companies out there in the SAP ecosystem that talk about this, but it's not a topic that I would say gets the time and attention it should, honestly, in the market. So what do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't want to give any specific names, but a lot of our partners do a really great job. I would look specifically, examine your use case, examine what's important to you. If you're in like an asset intensive or heavy asset intensive industry, then maybe EAM, maybe maintenance is one of the top topics. It's going in phase 0. So maybe that makes you consider your SIs a little bit more and find somebody with maintenance specific or asset specific expertise in your implementation. A lot of times S4 is led by, finance. So, a bigger, more global company with a lot of implementations under their belt is going to do a great job with finance. But, niche SIs can kind of go one of two ways, either the business process side or the industry side, or sometimes a little bit of both. So sometimes there are industry specific partners, sometimes there are process specific partners, and process would be, designed to operate, acquire to decommission, asset specific, source to pay, those kind of different business processes. And then industry, of course, speaks for itself.
Yeah,
so I
for
think
sure.
that's a good way of kind of identifying who's on your list that you want to talk to. And the good news is a lot of these SIs work very well together. So if you are working for, a bigger finance-led S4 HANA transformation, a lot of those companies will, in fact, reach out to the experts in an industry or the experts in a process and subcontract and bring those on board. So you get the best of both worlds.
Good point. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. All right. Well, let's switch gears slightly. I guess given that Prospecta is hosting this webinar, I have to have a little bit of a commercial in the middle for why we matter in this process versus why it's just an important business problem. So, Jordan, if you bear with me, we're gonna go through just a few slides here, and then we'll drop back in and chat about it a little more.
Yeah.
All right. Give me just a second. Like everybody on Earth, I have to say, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so to start with, and again, I know we're talking about S4, and there's all the data in S4, right? There's business partner, there's customer, there's vendor, there's material, there's assets, there's there's finance data, there's all these different kind of master data areas. So first off, in an S4 program, although you and I do spend a lot of our time talking about these heavy asset industries and asset specific kind of issues, S4 really is more of a holistic data problem, but if you have a situation like you were telling about yesterday, where essentially an asset project, and I can think of one right now up in the Pacific Northwest that I know about, can drive an entire S4 transformation, right? It can be the thing that pulls the business value through. So if I think about those particular areas, really we're often talking to the maintenance organization and we're talking to the procurement organization. We've already talked about procurement a good bit. So really what you want to go in and say, and these are people who aren't typically IT folks. They aren't typically thinking about ways to solve problems with software or data. They just know they have these business problems that like how much time are they actually turning wrenches, when they go out and work in the plant? How much, what's the equipment uptime and some of the predictive maintenance stuff that comes into that? What if they're a highly distributed organization, like a midstream company or something, and they got to travel out to, 500 different well sites and have the same stuff and have the same spare parts and fix the stuff the first time. So first call resolution becomes really important. So how do we talk about those kind of business problems and center them on data? And then on procurement side, we already talked about, hard dollar savings on MRO spares, or reducing the lack of compliance to standard procurement processes. People are just going out and buying stuff because they can't find it in the system and paying whatever they need to pay at the last minute for it. So, these are all business problems that really come to the forefront when you're looking at moving to S4. And again, these are, I'd call these very data oriented problems. These outcomes are dependent on having good, clean data in the system to achieve these results, not just better business processes, if you don't focus on the data. And again, why MDO or any data platform? So first off, it's 100% cloud-based, pure SaaS capability. And really what it does is helps you figure out what's wrong with your data. That can include all of your S4 master data and baseline it and say, yeah, here's where it is today, and here's what some of the problems are, and here's some opportunities for improvement. And then you can actually improve the data. You can clean it up. You can add missing information. You can standardize so that does BLK mean black or does BLK mean block? You can decide, and then that can be your standard. If there's missing information, you can actually hire companies like Prospecta or other partners of ours to go out and actually enrich that data with data you don't even have, either from our own database of several million parts or from internet sources. And then finally, once you've worked so hard to get all this good data that's going to go into your S4 system, you want to keep it clean so it doesn't get bad again. So workflows and business rules and different things that will allow you to maintain that data and monitor it and make sure that it's not getting bad again in the new system. So these are all areas that in the past you would have had to buy multiple products. You would have had to run mostly on-prem, maintain it yourself. All that's going to be done, in the cloud with very quick, go to market and very quick, implementation times and things like that. And as I mentioned, underneath the covers, we're doing data validation, data profiling under the discovery side. That's that baselining of the data and monitoring of it to make sure that it stays clean. In the middle, we're actually classifying the data. We love standards. So ISO 14224 for equipment, UNSPSC for, spare parts or PIDEX, CFOs for capital projects, cleansing and enrichment services that go on top of these capabilities. And then on the MDM side, and again, we spend so much of our time talking about MDO in an MDM context and how it compares to other solutions in the market, both similar, I'd say more newer solutions like MDO that are the latest and greatest microservices and are SaaS based. But there's also a lot of very robust legacy systems that have been deployed and have been out there for a long time. We've got a customer down in Texas actually that did a direct comparison of MDO to a legacy solution for an S4 program. And they literally went through one basically presentation, one demo, and compared to what they'd been used to for the last 20 years and had deployed and were not looking forward to having deployed again. They selected MDO to be their enterprise MDM platform for their new S4 program. It literally took about 4 hours of engagement time. It was one of the fastest sales cycles I've ever been part of because they really understood the space and they said, this is a better mousetrap. And their implementation partner, which was one of the big five we talked about, literally went in their spreadsheet and they took the $5 million implementation cost they had baked in for that legacy solution to be re-implemented on S4 and dropped it down to about a third of that for MDO for all domains. So again, much faster time to market, much cheaper solution, much easier to maintain themselves going forward around that. And again, not going to go through this in detail, but we'd love to talk to any of you guys about how MDO, our data intelligence platform, really helps with data quality, data improvement, master data, data reporting, whether it's for DataSphere or SAP itself, connecting into, again, like I said, your data lakes and your warehouses and your data spheres of the world, but also bringing data in from multiple systems, giving you that staging area for S4 whenever you're going to it so that you can drive value and work on the data and have the business people work on the data, and then ultimately load that data into your new S4 system. And we've talked about this. You'll hear, if you look at much of our literature, you'll see us talking about phase 0 utilization of MDO. That's that use case I just mentioned, which is it's going to be a while before S4 gets here, but let's start working on our data now and have a single source of truth for our core master data, for business partner, for assets, for spares, all that. And then managing the actual data migration itself. And then when you go live with S4, you've then got MDO sitting there. Every time you create a new piece of equipment, every time you change a spare part out, every time you add a new business partner, there's a platform to help you manage that, in parallel, that's deployed and ready to go. So that's our bit of our infomercial. Any thoughts, Jordan?
Yeah, I was going to say, Scott, I must have missed it, but I'm surprised you didn't even mention your master data health assessment. I think that's a really valuable thing that you guys offer as well to help companies understand the current state of their master data and what needs to be done and what ought to be done, and certainly positions you guys well to help companies do those things. So if you want to talk about that for a minute or two.
No, thank you for being my perfect straight man on that. That's going to be what we're going to offer everybody on the back end. But yeah, to Jordan's point, guys, something that we and other companies do, I don't want to act like we're the only ones on earth that does this, but something that we'll do is if you want to have these conversations around either your asset or spare parts data or your S4 data in general, is we can actually come in and take a sample of your data and run through a bunch of checks that effectively we do in MDO, and then give you back the baseline of that data and says, hey, here's where you're doing well. So maybe your data is pretty well complete, for example, but what's in there is incorrect, or maybe it's not very complete, but what's there is good. But sort of really help you look at that data and give you a kind of a scorecard, as well as a recipe for what you should do to kind of tackle that going forward, whether you do it yourself, whether you do it with us, whether you do it with another vendor. But effectively, that is absolutely something that we can do. We don't charge for it. It's called a data health assessment, and it's a great way to look at your data. So thank you for bringing that up, Jordan. That's a good point.
And I see we have a question here. I wanted to answer that as well, or at
Yeah,
least
please
give
go
my
ahead.
answer to it. And Scott, if you want to as well. The question comes from Sharon, I think, or Karan. Can you please provide suggestion for the client who is in doubt about implementing S/4HANA to their existing ERP? So yeah, of course, change is always scary. And one of the things that really stuck with me was an analogy that was made back in our innovation days in Las Vegas back in March of this year. We had a keynote speaker who made a wonderful analogy, right? First asked the entire audience, has anybody been whitewater rafting? And maybe two people, a couple hundred people in there, two people raised their hands and asked one of them to come on stage and said, now tell me why you wanted to go whitewater rafting. The guy was talking about, oh, what would have been a fun sense of adventure. It would have been this, it would have been that. I could take some pictures. It's a fun memory, these kinds of things. And then the speaker asked, oh, but did you know how long it was going to take? Did you know that you were, what the risks were? And did you feel like those risks were appropriately mitigated? And so went through this series of questions where, yeah, whitewater rafting is dangerous. Category 5 rapids in Colorado. Yeah, I might go overboard. I got my life vest on. That helps. I know how long I'm going to be gone. It's going to take about 6 hours, right? I've got food with me. I've got, first aid kit with me. I've got experts with me. And I know that all the different pieces are accounted for and mitigated for. So often it's not the journey itself. It's the marketing of the journey, right? It's the trust with leadership. So a lot of times if you know where you're going, you know how you're going to get there, you know how long it's going to take, you know that all the different risks are mitigated and accounted for, then S/4HANA is like any other journey. And one of the things that SAP can help you do in that regard is we have a value advisory team. And the value advisory team, just like the master data health assessment that Prospecta does, the value advisory team comes in, for free and helps build a business case for what S/4HANA, the journey to S/4HANA is going to look for you, what your ROI is going to be based on what your biggest pain points and what your critical business pieces are, and helps make a case to leadership for why S/4HANA is going to be, successful for you. The other thing is it has been successful for, our 18,000 customers who have already implemented. And S/4HANA is not a new tool. It's almost 10 years old next year.
Yep.
So, it's been around a while, and we've had a lot of successful releases and a lot of customers and gain more every day. So, we can definitely help you get started with the value advisory discussion and, share other customer reference stories and things like that for sure.
No, that's a good point. And Jordan, as you were talking, like you said, there are, I would say, the direct benefits of implementing S4, right? Better business processes, more adherence to a clean core, all those sorts of less customized, complicated solutions that are hard to upgrade, and some of the promises of ECC, which is like, hey, we can customize anything to do anything, which you could, but then you end up with these highly complex systems. And I think S4 really fixes that in a way, right? While still adding the business value. But what I've seen kind of that people don't think about, I'll just mention this, is an S4 program is a catalyst for change, right? It takes something that is, as you said, very important to the business. Like, I'm running my business on this. If it doesn't succeed, I fail. I can't close my books. I can't do anything. But what it also does is it gives you the opportunity to, tools rationalization. We hear this all the time. Hey, we're going to S4. We've got 3 legacy data quality, master data management tools we've picked up over the years, but we want to take this opportunity to evaluate and decide if we've got the latest and greatest. Is it good enough? Is this a chance for us to do something different and innovate? A way to save money. Because you're not paying maintenance on all these different systems. And again, I talk about master data because it's my world, but a funding vehicle to do new stuff with. Every S4 program I see has something new and cool they're doing beyond just replacing the old finance system, to your point. So I think thinking of S4 as a really opportunity for for a catalyst for change inside your organization is which makes it kind of exciting. You're not just swapping out the old boiler out of the boiler room. You're actually doing new cool stuff. So that would be my little bit of extra, oomph on that, is to say that not only is it a better, cooler, way to run your business, there's an awful lot of cool stuff you can do around the edges when you go through an S4 program. There's a capacity of how much you can fit in that box, right? And how much time, money, energy, for people get sick of it, but get as much as you can in the box, because what you won't do is say, we're going to do S4, and then 3 months later find another initiative and then another initiative, because S4 is going to consume you for a year or two, usually. Most big companies, not little companies. So,
yeah, well said.
Excellent. All right. We saw one question there. Aaron, have we had any other questions come in through the Q&A? I can't see all of them from my side.
Yeah, it looks like there's a few other questions that actually did come in. You touched a little bit on a program that isn't starting until 2027. If they were interested in starting a conversation or a data track, they wanted to know, what kind of plan do they have to put in place? I assume maybe that might mean resources.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good point. What I would say is, we see this a lot, right? Companies are like, okay, we're currently evaluating whether we want to go to S4. Yeah, it's a binary, it's a yes or a no, and that takes some period of time. Jordan, your point with the value resources you guys have to help with that question. And then sometimes companies go, okay, we're going to move, but we're not going to move next year. We're going to move in 2026. We're closing in on 2025 already. It's hard to believe. So then they start, to your point, what can we do now? What you can do now is you can license MDO at a relatively affordable cost. You can load all your master data into there with our help. You can profile it, and then you can start cleaning it up. What I want to keep, what I want to get rid of, what needs help, what can my subject matter experts work on, what do I need to outsource in terms of cleansing. But it gives you more time, and time equals money. If you have to clean up 200,000 material master records in 6 months, that's a big undertaking. You're pretty much going to have to outsource that to Prospecta or to somebody to do that for you. But if you got 2 years to do it, you can do it a lot slower, and you can do it in-house maybe. And you can leverage technology to help you do that. So I'd say that phase 0 approach, where MDO starts now, and the cleanup and the utilization. The good thing is, once you get the data cleaned up, you can use it now. You can use it in your SAP system as it is today, or your other ERP systems, or use it in MDO to report on. So I would say getting started now with a data improvement program that's going to directly impact your S4 program is, a very smart way to go. What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of ways to get started. That's certainly a good one. Looking at and identifying what your current pain points are is always a good start. And then from there, engage with Prospecta, engage with SAP. My role in the Center of Excellence for SAP is really to help triage customer challenges. So I help, if you guys have asset management challenges, engage with your sales team. They'll get in touch with me. They'll bring me in, and I can help understand, do you need to talk to this partner? Do you need to maybe take a good look at this SAP solution, and help to uncover and solve some of those challenges? And a lot of these challenges now are just like I said earlier, customers are starting to look ahead at what their S4 transformation might be and what it might entail, in trying to get out in front of some of those issues that might come up, especially around master data.
For sure. Aaron, I think we've got time for one more question.
Yeah, it looks like there are a couple others that came through Q&A, actually. It's just in another screen. Are there areas outside of assets that you can help with?
Simple, short question. Yes. The short answer is yes. Like I said, I think we had the opportunity to have Jordan here with us today. We have been more focused, I'd say, on the heavy asset industries and asset and material data. But absolutely, when it comes to S4, you have all those critical data domains, right? You've got finance data, you've got business partner data, which maybe in your ECC system was customer and vendor data that needs to turn into business partner. You've got materials, you've got finished goods, you've got spare parts, we've got assets. If it's more heavy asset industries, we've got, lots of different units of measure. There's all sorts of different areas for master data. So yes, absolutely. These same concepts we're talking about would apply to all that master data. Really, I think the big thing I wanted to make sure this is clear today is we're talking about master data. Master data is the pivot that the company moves upon, right? All the operational data, like how many task lists have I executed, how many work orders have I run through, how many new customers, how many new vendors have I onboarded, how much business have I done with those vendors? Those are all transactional things, right? That happen based on the master data of the vendor itself or the business partner itself. So yes, absolutely. This applies to any kind of master data in an S4 context, not just the more heavy asset stuff that Jordan and I've been talking about. So great question. Thank you. And Aaron, there was one more, I think.
How do you work within an S4 implementation? Can you work with an SI that we already are engaged with to help get our data clean?
The answer is yes, absolutely. It's we can stripe right into that. It's just a track within that S4 program, and then we can make sure that when we're doing certain activities, we can merge those so that we're not wasting time with the business that has to participate. So for sure, we can absolutely very comfortable doing that as part of a larger S4 initiative. Yes.
Okay.
And then we had
my own add-in, though, I would like to put a preference on. We talked a lot about preparing for S4, but what about if it's already been done?
Oh, good point. Yeah, good job. We should have covered that. Yeah, that we talked about understanding your data, improving your data, and then keeping your data clean. That third piece, which is the keeping the data clean, is super important because otherwise people are going to go right into that new S4 system and start creating bad data again. So absolutely, when you go live with your S4 system, or if you've already gone live, then MDO is easy to, deploy and work with outside of that context and get it up and running quickly, so you can then use it to keep your S4 data clean and have that clean core. Thank you, Aaron. Those were great questions. Jordan, final thoughts, comments?
Yeah, come talk to us if you're moving to S4, if you have S4, if you're experiencing challenges with data or within the asset maintenance and management space, we're happy to help. That's what we do for a living. So a lot of success and really want to get you up and running and adding velocity to your business.
Perfect. Hey, Jordan, I personally really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. It was really great talking to you as always.
Yeah, it's always fun. Appreciate the invite, Scott.
Thanks everybody for joining us today. Let us know if we can anything else we can do to talk.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.